Hello, welcome to Side A, Side B. This is going to be a first video in a series that's going to use the keyhole method to solve the Rubik's Cube. With so many variations to solve the cube, you really hold the key to solving the cube and to help show that point. Today we're going to be using the keyhole method to solve the second layer edges. So let's start. Hope everyone's doing well. The daisy method. I love the daisy method to solve the first layer edges. But in fact, there are a variety of ways to solve the first layer edges. Before we start with the keyhole method to solve the second layer edges, we're going to use an acronym to solve the first layer edges. So an acronym is a word made from a phrase. That's the basic. So basically an acronym is a word made from a phrase. So if our phrase is white, red, yellow, and orange. So again, if our phrase is white, red, yellow, and orange, we can make an acronym from that phrase, and it's RIO. Okay, so there's the basis to solving the first layer edges. So we can RIO and there we go. By using that acronym, we have solved the first layer edges. RIO. Okay. Now we're going to use the keyhole method. Okay, just to start off, just to do a reset. Okay, for the keyhole method, there's four requirements to do the keyhole method to solve the second layer edges. Okay, so if green is our first layer. The first requirement is to, well, there's four requirements after we've solved the first layer edges. So the first requirement after we've done that is to solve the one corner, to solve a corner. And we can easily do that just by doing this. Okay. The second requirement for the keyhole method is in the beginner way of solving the second layer edges, we use that algorithm which I shared, and that algorithm required, if this is our edge piece, the white and red, if the white and red edge piece goes here, the beginner algorithm that does that, it requires that this piece, this white edge, be matched with its white center. Okay? And vice versa. If this was flipped, and red was showing, the red would have to match up with its red center. Okay, but for the keyhole method, if we're going to use the keyhole method to solve the second layer edges, this edge matches up with its opposite. Okay, that's the second requirement. That's the second requirement. So our first requirement was to put the corner piece so it's solved. Our next requirement was to put the edge piece so the edge piece is matched up with its opposite. The third requirement is to move our U one turn. So we move this corner piece out of the way by one turn. And the fourth requirement, the last requirement, is we have our keyhole. You notice that first of all, if you notice the top, if we have this edge piece that's solved, we actually have 3 keyholes. This is solved, so we have 1, 2, 3. We actually have 3 keyholes that we can use. So a keyhole, in this case, is an opening, and it's a line. It's an opening, an aperture that we can manipulate pieces while not disturbing the other pieces. Okay, so this corner is already solved. We need to move it once so we can bring in a keyhole. So that's the fourth requirement. Now that we have a keyhole, we're set up to move this edge piece to where it should be. And I'm not going to, this is very straightforward, so I'm not going to write this algorithm down. But I will say it though. Okay. So let's do a reset. So in order to, if we're going to do the keyhole method to solve the second layer edges, there's 4 requirements that have to be met. The first requirement is to have the corner piece, the edge that we're going to be solving, the edge that we're going to be solving, its corner piece has to be solved. This corner piece is solved. Okay, that's the first requirement. The second requirement is this edge piece that we're focusing on. Its edge has to be on its opposite, on the opposite center. Okay, that's the second requirement. The third requirement is to move our corner piece one turn, so it's out of the way. And the fourth requirement is we have our keyhole. And now that we've met all the 4 requirements, we can move this edge piece to its correct position. And to do that, it's this. It's R prime D R. And if we and that took 3 moves. And if we move our corner piece, if we move our U one turn, so it's back to its spot, we can see that our edge piece is in its correct spot. It's white and red. Provided we've met those 4 requirements, it's a 3-move application to put this edge piece in its correct spot. All right, now let's move on to the next corner and the next edge piece. So to match to, so we have 4 requirements to do in order to put this edge piece in its correct spot if we're doing the keyhole method. Okay, here's our corner. We can put that corner. So that's the first requirement. The next requirement is finding our edge piece and putting it in its correct, to mean its requirement. Here's the edge piece that we want. Here's orange and white. Here's the orange and white piece. We can take that piece out quite easily. Okay. Now this orange and white piece, the orange, for our second requirement, this edge piece, the orange needs to match up with its opposite center. It's white. That's the second requirement. Third requirement is to, one turn, move our U. And now our fourth requirement is we have our keyhole. Now a keyhole, this piece is in its correct spot, but it's unsolved, and that's okay. So some of these, in our keyhole, some of these pieces could be in their correct spots and solved. But we can just ignore, if we've defined our keyhole, we can just ignore these pieces. Okay, so this piece, this corner piece is actually in its correct spot, but that we can just ignore that. Okay, so this one, it's the same one. It's we have. So now that we've met all the four requirements, if we're using the keyhole method, now we're ready to put the edge piece in its correct spot. So to do that, it's R prime, D, R, and it's just one move to put the corner piece back in its correct spot, and there we go. Our edge piece, it's in its correct spot using the keyhole method. Okay, now we move on to the next one. Okay. All right. So this is going to be okay, so we can, yeah. Okay, here we go. All right. So this piece, we do the same thing. We made those four requirements, and this one I'll do a little bit. So this one is a yellow piece. Okay, we've been doing one example, the examples where, so this one I'm gonna switch. When I put this edge piece in its correct spot, I'll switch it, and then we'll do where it's in orange, and it's a little bit different, but it's just the reverse operation. Okay, so in order to, if we're using the keyhole method, we have four requirements to do. And we've met the first requirement. This corner piece is in its correct spot and is solved. Our edge piece is now in its met its second requirement. The third requirement, we move our edge piece, one move. And our fourth requirement is now we have our keyhole. Okay, and again, it's R prime, D, R, and it's just one move to put our corner piece back to its correct spot. But now, let's do an example where it's on this side, okay, where the edge piece is matched with its center, but it's orange. Orange is matched with its orange center, okay? So we can do that. Okay. Okay, so now this is a different example. Okay. If we're doing the Keyhole method, there's 4 requirements that need to happen before we can put the edge piece in its correct spot. The first requirement, we've done it. The second requirement is to move this edge piece to where it's matched up with its opposite center, which is yellow. Okay, that's the second. The third requirement is to move our corner. Fourth requirement is to have our keyhole, and there's our keyhole. Okay, so this one is slightly different. It's now we're set up to put our edge piece in its correct spot using the keyhole method. And this one is slightly different. This one is F, D prime, F prime, and there we go. So there's fabulous. We just done 2 examples. If we're using the keyhole method, there's 2 examples on how to put this edge piece in its correct spot. Beautiful. And in later video, we're going to be using the keyhole method to solve the entire cube. But for now, we can, if you're familiar with the next steps to solve the cube. Okay, so we can okay, so let's just finish it off with the beginner algorithm. Okay, and that one is, again, this edge is matched up with its center. Okay, and that's that, 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 and there we go. Beautiful. And there you go. There's the Keyhole method. There's the acronym, using an acronym in the Keyhole method to solve the first and second layers. And if you're familiar with orienting the third layer edges and the corners, and know the 2 corner solve, then you can go ahead and solve the cube. So there you go. Provided that you do some requirements, the second layer edge pieces can be put up in 3 moves. With so many variations to solving the cube, you hold the key.